Hi everyone, welcome to the UNSW Co-op Career Chat evening for engineering. We'll give it just another minute or two just so everyone can join. As people are sort of joining, before we do get started, I will apologise for a few things in advance. Because UNSW is very focused on sustainability and saving electricity, my office light will most likely turn off during the presentation, so don't be afraid or scared if that happens. We also have an embedded video in this presentation, so I'm hoping technology is on my side tonight. And we will try and stick to the schedule. However, if we have lots of questions, which is great, we may end up going a bit over time. So as people are coming through, I might just give it 10 more seconds and then we might get started. Alrighty, so welcome to our second installment of our Career Chat evenings, where tonight we'll talk about engineering. My name is Karen and I'm the industry partner for business and engineering. And I'm also joined by Michelle, who's the head of the Co-op program, and some great panelists who I'll introduce a bit later. In terms of some housekeeping, so this session, like business yesterday and technology tomorrow, will be recorded. The links will be sent, well, the links for all three sessions will be linked to, sent to everyone who's registered and to careers advisors, and will be uploaded to YouTube over the next few weeks. So don't stress if you've missed something, but also just be a bit patient with us. There's also a Q&A box, so please feel free to include any questions that you have as we're going through the sessions. Before we do go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the Bidjigal people who are the traditional custodians of the land we're coming to you from tonight and the UNSW Kensington campus. I acknowledge that the Indigenous peoples of Australia have contributed to education and business practice since before any of us were around. I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples who are joining us today. So, you're at a point in your life where it's good to start thinking about what you want to do as a career. Taking this first step can be confusing and or overwhelming, and all the emotions that you may be feeling. And I remember feeling these exact same feelings when I was in your shoes. First things first though, like making any decision or action, take a deep breath, shake or dance it out if you need, and try not to stress. We'll talk through some key tips when thinking about careers and what I've learned on my journey so far. The beauty of these tips is that they're relevant no matter what stage you're at in your career journey. The first is do your research and be a sponge. Figure out what's involved in a particular job, degree, or industry. Talk to people, learn about how they got where they are, and what skills they think are important to succeed. Ask them lots of questions, like what they wish they knew when they were in your shoes. When it comes to careers, the good thing is there is no right or wrong. Developing a career path takes time, and you don't need to have all the answers now. You'll hear me say that a lot tonight. Just remember to do what's best for you and not anyone else. You can always pivot and change your mind. And when it comes to choosing a career destination, there are multiple ways to get there. When you look around at people's careers, there's rarely a linear line of progression. Think about how best to prepare yourself for the next step that you are taking. Now you're probably wondering, where do I start or what should I consider? Remember, you don't have to have everything figured out now. You just need to figure out where you want to launch from. Things to consider or questions to ask yourself when choosing a career or the next step are, what are your skills and talents? What are some things that you're naturally good at or that you've worked at being good at? There may be other talents that you have, but you just don't know it yet. So be curious and give things a go. Your values. It's important to understand your values to figure out whether they align with the company you'll be working for. It's always good to do a stock take because as these can change as you change. Deanne Stewart, who's CEO of Aware Super and a 1989 marketing alumnus, once gave some great advice. Choose the company, not the role. The next one is interests. What do you enjoy or are you passionate about? Not what your parents, your siblings, your friends, or anyone else is passionate about. You are the one who will be doing the degree, career, or job, not them. Try and find what interests you. If you're not sure, ask yourself what things are you drawn to, or take time to figure that out. Don't be afraid of trial and error. Figuring out whether something for you is important, but also figuring out whether something isn't for you is equally as important. And the last one is opportunity. What influences can you draw upon? Who can you talk to get more information? Is there someone in your community where you play sport, volunteer, or work that you can speak to? Did you meet someone who inspired you, or did you read something that resonated with you? Be open to the opportunities around you. Once you've asked yourself those questions, you'll have a lot of information to work with. So where to next? You'll need to find out more information, and the best way to do that is to ask questions. Lean on your network and talk to people about their experiences and the lessons they've learned along the way, and whether they have any contacts that could help you with where you want to go. The next one is get some life experience and get involved. Join a sports team, volunteer your time for a community group, apply for casual work, get some life experience and gain some skills. Whilst your study is definitely important, this single focus will not do you any favours in the long run. There's a big emphasis not only by the Co-op program, but by companies as well, who are looking at well-rounded people who can balance commitments and who have a wide variety of skills, interests, and experiences. It's not just about whether you can do the job well, but who you are as a person or individual. A variety of activities also looks great on applications. It'll provide you with an ample supply of stories and examples for you to showcase your skills and interests and to tell us more about you. Seek out opportunities and just go for them. Don't wait for opportunities to come to you. Be proactive in everything that you do. Search for people you can meet and build connections with. Learn new things to broaden your knowledge or to gain new skills. And most importantly, don't panic. You have lots of time and you don't need to have all the answers now. See, I'm repeating it again and again. You are starting this journey early, especially also by joining the session, and you may gain some advantages as a result. New opportunities might come up, you might change your mind or direction, and that's okay. It's actually normal, in fact. Take it from someone who's changed companies and industries a few times. You don't need to make one ultimate career decision. Remember, it's a journey, so enjoy it. So for some of you, you may have already figured out that engineering is for you, and better yet, that engineering at UNSW is for you. But for those who haven't decided or are still not sure, engineering has an extremely wide reach that offers exciting career opportunities where you'll get to be creative, solve problems, and explore how things work every day. So why engineering at UNSW? On the screen, you'll not only see the UNSW engineering faculty overachieving across 3 rankings, but you'll also see photos of some of our engineering scholars and alumni on placement. UNSW has one of Australia's top engineering faculties with a strong international reputation and industry connections, and is at the forefront of education, research, and innovation. All of the engineering degree programs have a strong emphasis on design and problem solving. So from day one, you'll be involved in hands-on projects, collaborating with other students, and gaining relevant skills to industry. So how can you start deciding if engineering is for you? And if so, which area? There's lots of different types of engineering, so it might be difficult for you at this stage to know where to start. I would encourage you to do lots of research on the Co-op and UNSW websites to find a degree that's best suited to your interests, passions, values, and things you want to pursue later in life. But also use the Q&A as an opportunity to hear from our panelists. There are more areas of engineering at UNSW than what's listed above, which is a quick overview of specialisations we've recently offered co-op scholarships in. While there are lots of different areas, a key common theme is the focus on design and problem solving. Rather than hearing from me, as someone who's not an engineer, I thought I would share some of what our scholars have said when asked, what does an engineer do? Sam Constable, who is a photovoltaic scholar, said, an engineer deals with elements of problem solving. I've learnt more from my mistakes than successes, and it's an ongoing improvement process. And if things don't work, you can always reflect and learn. Kelsey Grady, who's a mechanical engineering scholar, said, as an engineer, it's a different type of thinking rather than working, approaching problems and situations creatively and differently, and breaking them down to the crux of something and then building it back up. And lastly, James Houseman, who is a chemical engineering scholar, said, it is a very abstract thing, more about the way you think than what you do. Engineers problem solve to create something or a process. There is such a wide variety of engineering areas. Speaking of people who are engineers and can speak to engineering, we're now moving on to the exciting opportunity for you to hear from our amazing panelists. First off, you'll hear from Robert Makepeace, a 2009 electrical engineering alumnus and project lead engineer at Provector, which is one of our current sponsors. You'll then, we may hear from Serena, who may be running a bit late, but she is a 2002 electrical engineering alumna who is the Capital COE manager at Lion Tui's, another current sponsor. We'll then watch a video from Megan Christian, a 2005 chemical product engineering alumna, who is the reserve astronaut and commercial exploration lead at the UK Space Agency, again, if technology is on my side. And then you'll hear from Varasara, who is a 2020 chemical engineering scholar who is currently in the 5th year of her degree. I'll now pass on to Robert.
Evening, everyone. As Karen said, my name is Robert and I'm an electrical engineer. I was in your position 15 years ago trying to decide what I wanted to do after high school. So I know it can be quite overwhelming and scary, but it's a very exciting time as well. So I was lucky enough to get an electrical engineering scholarship with Co-op, and one of my placement companies was with Provector. So I had 6 months with them in 2013. Provector are a small company that work on control systems for critical infrastructure, including power stations, wastewater treatment, and even ANSTO. So I was able to get involved in a range of projects then. And then when I graduated, they offered me a job. So I've been working with them for the last 10 years. My role mainly involves a lot of things. We do control systems for various power stations across Australia. So getting involved in the design and commissioning of new power stations, such as new grid-scale batteries, and also doing optimizations and improvements for existing power stations like the original Snowy Hydro scheme. My job also gets me involved in lots of other things, so project management, making sure projects are completed on time, on schedule and on budget, and mentoring young staff. We sponsor co-op, so we've got some young co-op students at the moment, so I get involved in helping them out and making sure they are learning and contributing, which is good. My career highlights. So when I was at UNSW, I was involved in SunSwift, which is a solar racing vehicle team. So I was part of the team that designed, constructed, and raced a solar-powered vehicle all the way from Darwin down to Adelaide. And I learned a lot of things from a practical project. So you can learn a lot in the classroom, but sometimes by doing things and getting involved in projects and trying to build things from scratch, you can learn a lot, which complements the things you learn in the classroom. So that was a great team building experience, and our team was very lucky that we made it all the way from Darwin to Adelaide in one piece. And we actually were the fastest team to do that, which is very exciting. Another career highlight for me was I spent a year living and working in Antarctica. So I got a job with the Bureau of Meteorology to move to Davis Research Station in Antarctica, where I was maintaining the Bureau of Meteorology research station there. So doing things like maintaining their hydrogen generator for weather balloons and maintaining their observation equipment and setting up remote weather stations 50 kilometers from anywhere for a runway. A typical day for me, it just involves lots of different projects. So, for example, today I've been involved in troubleshooting some meter issues on a grid-scale battery plant and trying to problem solve and get something working. I've also been involved in some meetings for a vibration system for a hydroelectric power station, designing a new system there, and also some meetings for adding some additional services to a wind farm to give them more robust system support to help the grid with the increased penetration of renewables. So it's a pretty varied job. It's pretty fast paced. There's lots of things happening, but I find it's pretty interesting. And I find it's good to see your impact when you're able to work on something, design something, and see that it works and it's making contributions to the transition to renewable energy and making sure that everyone's got reliable and affordable electricity. So in terms of advice for anyone considering a degree in engineering, I like to think of it as a toolbox. Engineers are great problem solvers. So doing a degree at UNSW, getting involved and doing co-op placements, adding tools to your toolbox that help you solve problems. A lot of my colleagues who've graduated work in engineering, and a lot of them work elsewhere. A lot of them work in finance, electric cars, cryptocurrencies, lots of things. And engineers are quite highly regarded. So don't feel that your career path is fixed. There's lots of opportunities and engineers are highly regarded. So I always try and say, do something that excites you, do something that you think will challenge you, but try and build your skills so that you can solve problems that you think are interesting. And yeah, there's a whole range of things that you can do, and engineering gives you that problem-solving mindset that is good for solving those problems. Yeah, I think that's about it. If you want to move on to your next video, Karen.
Too easy. Thanks, Robert, for sharing your insights. And I love that whole concept of the toolbox, which is something that Co-op is very big on. I'm sure if you remember from camp. I'll now pass on to Serena. Ooh, we might have some audio issues, Serena.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It's like the standard thing of working virtually. I can't hear you. So anyway, it's lovely to see you all. My name is Serena Tay. I'm a Capital COE Manager at Lion, COE standing for Centre of Excellence Manager. But really, I graduated from a Bachelor of Electrical Engineering back in 2006. So I started the Co-op program in 2002. And yeah, I mean, maybe what I can do is I might just cover off maybe some of the questions that we've just been asked to talk about. But how did I choose my career? So I guess I came out of high school not really 100% sure what I wanted to do. I'm not sure how all of you feel, but I certainly came out probably understanding what subjects I enjoyed at high school and certainly what subjects I didn't. So I was quite strong at maths and physics. Sort of liked to do software related type of subjects, but also felt that I didn't want to be a software engineer. So in speaking to my parents about that, they recommended electrical engineering. I thought, yeah, that sort of sounds pretty good. I researched it a little bit more and decided that that was something I was interested in studying at university. So that's really how I figured out that I wanted to study engineering. Was obviously fortunate enough to be a part of the Co-op program, which was really a wonderful program. And I think for those of you considering it, you know, the industry experience is excellent, you know, right? And it really helps to, I guess, if you partner that with what you're learning theoretically at university, it really makes quite a really enjoyable experience at university. You meet some excellent people, both in terms of students, in terms of staff at the uni, but also some really great contacts in industry. And I'd say coming out of the Co-op program, I again had a pretty good feel for things that or aspects of certain jobs that I really enjoyed at the time, and also aspects that I didn't enjoy. So I think the Co-op program really helped me to understand, okay, which areas, which type of roles, what type of industry I'd like to move into as a graduate. In terms of when I finished uni, I decided I didn't want to do something in the research field. That was just a personal choice. So I went into consulting, and I ended up working for 15 years at a consulting engineering company called Becker. And one of the really great things about consulting is that you have a lot of opportunity to be exposed to different clients, to different projects, to different industries. So during the first sort of, I'd say 4 or 5 years of my time at Becker, I was really there as a design engineer. So I spent a few years in the automation field, often in factory settings. So whether it was, for example, at Orica or at BlueScope over in Wollongong, I also did some work over at, I travelled a fair bit as a result. So I also worked in a butter factory over in regional Victoria. A wastewater treatment plant in Wollongong, but ultimately that type of role took me to a few different places, and I really was programming what we call programmable logic controllers, but essentially controllers that control things like pumps and other bits of equipment in a factory. So that was really cool. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the travel. I really enjoyed meeting new people and being on different types of projects, and ultimately a career in engineering provides you with, you can see the tangible outcomes of what you do. So, you as you work on projects, as you do design work, as you then execute that work out in the field, the really awesome thing is that you can actually see the outcome of all your hard work. So I spent a few years as a design engineer. I then went on to also design building power and lighting for schools and for universities and for shopping centres. So I did that. That was a bit of a change for me. But again, within consulting, you do have that ability to move around to sort of different areas. And then from there, I decided that I wanted to move into project management. So the natural step from design engineer is to be a project engineer. So again, that really took me to different parts of Australia. I travelled around Australia reviewing a whole lot of bakeries. I think there were 16 bakeries around Australia, so I travelled around doing that. I spent quite a few months in Mildura trying to help to rebuild an orange juice factory that had burnt down, for example. I worked in a bread company, a fairly large bread company, and one of my first project management roles was actually leading a project to put in the first major manufacturing line that brings in bread, little bread rolls into supermarkets. So this was going back 10 years. It was a new thing back then to have sort of fancy bread into supermarkets. So that was a bit of a career highlight for me. That was my first project, large scale project that I managed, and it was under tight timing and tight budget and difficult sort of stakeholder management, but ultimately it was a successful project. So that was probably a career highlight for me. And then moving on, I just continued to manage projects and manage design teams and for different clients in different industries. And then ultimately I decided to finish up with consulting because it does require a fair bit of travel. It does require a fair bit of time away from home, and I'd had my first child by that point. So I decided that I was looking for a job that was sort of more local to Sydney. So I then moved into Lion, which is where I work now. For those of you that don't know, Lion is probably one of the largest beer manufacturers in Australia. And so my role within Lion was firstly to help build, I guess, the whole project management capability, bring project management best practice into Lion. And now in my current role, I lead a team of project managers and engineers. So the role of my team is to deliver any large-scale project within the business, and that's really exciting because we have breweries around Australia and in New Zealand, and so that takes me to different parts of Australia and New Zealand just to check in and see how all the breweries are going and how all our projects are going. But it also means that I get to work with and lead a pretty amazing team of engineers and project managers who are fantastic at what they do. And ultimately, again, through my role and through my team, it's really lovely to be able to experience and see the tangible change that we make for the business and ultimately for our consumers. So that's a little bit, I guess, about my role now, and I'm just trying to go back and think about the other questions I was looking to answer. But typical day. So really typical day, it's honestly pretty different every day. And I think it's that's due to the fact that a lot of my role is around supporting and executing a whole lot of different projects, right? So it could be, you know, traveling to a brewery to see, you know, recently we've installed a new can line, so a new line that packages beer into cans. So we've installed some new equipment. There's also been other projects around, you know, developing new hospitality sites. So generally there's a lot of variation, and that's because there's a lot of variety in the type of projects that we deliver and that we support. So often I'm still traveling around and just checking in and seeing how all those projects are going. There's also a lot of problem solving just generally. And I think that's quite just the nature of engineering, which I think is awesome. You know, if problem solving is something you think you enjoy doing, then, you know, a career in engineering leads to a lot of, you know, problem solving day to day. And that's, you know, so that's something I really sort of thrive on and I really enjoy. And working with a whole bunch of different people to be able to reach an outcome is really something that I enjoy doing. So there's often discussions, you know, meetings with a whole lot of different stakeholders, both within my team and external, to work through just a whole lot of different problems that we seem to face through the day. And if I'm just thinking about other things day to day, I guess, you know, being a leader of a team, there's also day-to-day interactions ultimately that come with developing, you know, members of my team as well. So that's a typical day. Career highlights so far, I think I've mentioned a couple, but really I'd say that you know, there's been some really challenging projects through my career, and there are often times where you just think, oh my goodness, this is really hard, and, you know, all these you know, are we ever going to sort of get to the end? And then ultimately, when you do get to the end and you reach a really fantastic outcome, it's really rewarding. So there's been a number of those, and I'd say they're all sort of career highlights. And then the other thing I'd just probably note there is, you know, I really love working with engineers generally. So I think, and, you know, I do find that typically, if you're seeking a career in engineering, you know, the one fantastic thing I've always found is engineers are, you know, they're really great people to work with. They love to solve problems. We all just generally are very sort of outcome-oriented people. So we just get in and want to do things and get things done, which is fantastic. So that's one of the things I really also enjoy about what I do. Advice for anyone considering a career in my space, really it's I think sometimes it can be difficult to know what exactly you want to do. So I think it helps, in my case anyways, at least I had some understanding of perhaps what my strengths and interests were. And given I didn't have a specific area that I wanted to start off with, that was my starting point, right? It was what are the things that I enjoy doing or studying? What do I see as sort of my strengths, and what are some of the I guess options from a university perspective, and in terms of I guess different degrees that you can consider that align with those strengths. And then furthermore, I think it's been probably noted, but I think Robin made a good point about the fact that, yeah, just when you do decide to study engineering, it doesn't mean you end up as an engineer either, right? So I think engineering really equips you with some amazing skills that can be applied across many different industries. And it also provides you a way of thinking that is, you know, that is different, again, to I'd say other students who come out with different degrees. You know, you're sort of, I'd say, you know, and I think that tends to be quite highly regarded. So, you know, I think most organizations often look for diversity of thought and diversity of background. And I think engineering just gives you a great way to approaching problem solving, particularly. And I don't know if that was mainly everything. That was sort of the key things of the key questions I think I was asked to answer. Hopefully I've answered most of them.
No, that was great. Thank you so much, Serena, for sharing your journey and experience. I think for me, the takeaway was just how transferable but also diverse engineering can be, just in terms of the projects and where it can take you around Australia and internationally. And my lame joke for the night is that you can literally say that engineering is your bread and butter.
Well done. Very good.
And now for the moment of truth as to whether technology is my friend tonight. We will now watch a video from Megan. So let's see.
Hi everyone, my name is Megan Christian and I was a co-op scholar in industrial chemistry between 2005 and 2009. I actually hadn't really thought of doing engineering when I was in my last year of school. I definitely knew I wanted to do sciences and possibly combined with arts, but it was really the co-op scholarship that attracted me to doing engineering because really I didn't know a lot about it. And I'm so glad I did because I really loved that sort of problem solving aspect of everything. So definitely thanking the co-op program for that, for just pulling me into it in the first place. Since my degree, my career path has been, well, let's say varied, certainly interesting and perhaps a little bit unexpected as well. So I thought I'd just give you a bit of a rundown on that. So after my undergrad, I decided to do a PhD. So I did actually really love my industrial training placements, and I would definitely have considered going to work in one of the places that I had done those placements. But I also discovered a love of research and discovery. So my undergraduate thesis had been on hydrogen storage for fuel cell vehicles using nanomaterials, and I was able to continue that research during my PhD in the School of Chemical Engineering. All my time during co-op, my interviews for the co-op program, and then throughout my my undergrad, the kind of experiences that I had there, they definitely helped me towards then getting a position later in life. So I got this postdoc and moved to Bologna in Italy, threw myself into the language and the culture, and really had a lot of fun. Some space applications also came up. And so I got to go on board this aeroplane that did a maneuver going up very, very steeply, and then it turns off its engines on the top of this parabola. You get 22 seconds of weightlessness. And then you, at the bottom of both sides of the parabola, you actually get 20 seconds of double gravity. And so this was my first sort of experience of weightlessness and what it might be like to work in space, just a little taste of it. So that was extremely exciting. And it was something that kind of fulfilled me doing this work. The National Research Council of Italy, where I was working, has two permanent stations, two stations in Antarctica. I actually got to go and spend a year in Antarctica. And I think the reason was that I had a lot of transferable skills, partially from the scientific research that I had been doing, also from the background that I'd had from my industrial training placements all that time ago at university. So I spent this year in Antarctica, which was a life-changing experience. It was absolutely amazing. We got down to a temperature of minus 104 degrees wind chill. I was working outside every day. And it was basically a technician's role. What I was really worried about when I was going there was that I wouldn't have some of the technical skills necessary. But I found that when I got there, I was able to pick it up really quickly. And this is something that you learn when you're at uni. You really learn to pick things up quickly, to analyze, and to actually enjoy that learning process. At the same time, I was spending time looking at the stars, and the stars in Antarctica are just incredible. The air is thinner, so you can see them, and it feels like you're inside them. This learning of the technical skills, which I didn't have the confidence for before, but I had built that confidence during that time. And the fact of being a custodian for other people's experiments meant that when the European Space Agency opened up applications for astronauts for the first time in 13 years, a couple of years later, I definitely wanted to apply. It was absolutely something that I wanted to do. I was selected as a member of the reserve for the European Space Agency. And so now I find myself waiting for a potential mission to space one day, probably to the International Space Station. Who knows? Perhaps to the moon. But yeah, it's hugely exciting. And while I'm waiting for this mission, I'm working at the UK Space Agency. I really wanted to get more involved in the space sector. So as I said, it's been a hugely varied career and really not what I expected from the beginning, but I think each of the little steps along the way contributed to the next one, and I certainly got a really strong founding from my time at UNSW, and in particular in the co-op program. So coming back to that time, I just thought I'd maybe give you a few little pieces of advice, which I hope can be helpful during your time and how you can make the most of your time at UNSW. Let your time at uni teach you the soft skills as well as your technical expertise, because to be honest, these are the things that you're going to use the most and that you'll probably remember more easily than everything else. You really learn a lot when you're on the job in terms of technical expertise, but those soft skills are something that you need to develop. And as a co-op scholar, you have a great opportunity to really develop these things. And so that's number one. Number two, have fun. So you may have a lot of contact hours, especially if you're an engineer like me. And yes, your summers are taken up with industrial training placements. But aside from the joy that you actually get from doing those things, uni, those years at uni are some of the best times in your life. So make the most of it. And the last thing I wanted to say was, when it comes to looking into your future career path, really keep your mind open. So you've got a really strong base thanks to your co-op scholarship and everything that means. But as you're thinking about the future, keep your mind open and just look out for strange and interesting opportunities that might not be part of your traditional career path, because they may really help to fulfill your life like they have with me. My experience in Antarctica changed everything. And yeah, so and getting these broader perspective on things kind of help us to solve the world's problems. So enjoy, and I wish you the best of luck.
Yes, I will take that as a win. No tech difficulties, just vocabulary. I'll now pass on to Varisara to share her journey so far.
Hey guys, so I'm Varisara. I'm in my 5th year of chemical engineering. And like a lot of the others, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I was applying for the co-op program. I just knew that I enjoyed my maths and sciences in high school, and I was really passionate about sustainability. I wanted to do something that would make a tangible difference to the world. And I really didn't know what a day in the life of a chemical engineer looked like, but I knew that chemical engineers could work in many industries. So you can go in pharmaceuticals, food, oil and gas, and water. So I thought I'd give it a go. And I think that's one of the great things about the co-op program, is that you actually get to go on real industry experience throughout your degree. So you get to find out exactly what life is like before you graduate with a degree. So my first placement was at SafeWork New South Wales. I was placed in the major hazard facilities team. And this team essentially looks after all those big chemical facilities which store lots of hazardous chemicals. So if anything were to go wrong, there'd be a big disaster. It could wipe out entire cities and towns. So really important work happening there. And I got a really valuable opportunity to shadow inspectors, safety analysts, fire and rescue, as well as police. And I got to learn about process safety from a regulatory perspective. And looking back, having now worked on the other side of that in industry, that was a really cool and unique experience. After that, I went on exchange. So I went to UBC Vancouver in Canada, and I thought that I'd include this in there because definitely the co-op program helped make that experience happen. And it was definitely one of the highlights of my university experience. All my internships with co-op already. I didn't have to spend that summer looking for summer internships and going on those internships. So that really freed up my time and allowed me to go on exchange, which is something I highly recommend to everyone. So after exchange, I worked at Lion at Tooheys Brewery in Lidcombe, and I worked under the utilities team. So I was tasked with reducing our water use on site, and this involved conducting a site-wide water efficiency study. So I looked at data from meters, I physically walked the lines, looked at drawings, looked out for leaks, talked to other process engineers at the different places. And we ended up realizing that there weren't enough water meters, and this developed into a bigger water metering project where I actually had to talk to sales, contractors, mechanical installers, electricians, and I scoped and created a business case for a water metering project. And it's actually now been approved. And this year I've heard back that they've actually bought those meters, and it's in the final stages of commissioning. So it's really cool that during my internship, I was able to make a real difference, and that is something that's actually making a difference to the site at TUI's. So the key learnings there was essentially lots of project management and stakeholder management skills, as well as a lot of technical metering and instrumentation knowledge, which really came in handy for my next few placements. So for later half of the 6 months, I was at Veolia, and I worked in a mine water treatment site out in Lithgow. So I actually lived and worked in Lithgow for 6 months. And this was a really valuable experience. I worked within the process engineering team, and I looked at helping them with ad hoc troubleshooting and investigations. I was also involved in a lot of the sampling and lab work. And what was special about that place was because of the nature of the mine water coming in and the location of that site was so far away from the coast, there were a lot of water treatment technologies that you wouldn't find here in Sydney. So I learned a lot about those. And at the end of my placement, actually a cadet engineer role opened up at a Veolia site in Sydney. So that's where I'm currently working part-time. And it just has given me an opportunity to dive deeper into the world of water treatment. I've been involved a lot more in the reporting side of things, invoicing to customers, and currently working on preparing budgets and updating plant drawings and documentations. So that's my career journey so far.
Great, thank you so much, Varasara. We can't wait to see where you go, and maybe someday you'll come back as an alumni speaking on another panel. So while we are talking about careers and engineering and UNSW more broadly, we are the Co-op program. So to provide a quick overview of what the scholarship program is, we are looking for high achieving and high potential, well-rounded students who are passionate about pursuing a career in a particular industry. In terms of what we can offer you, so students do get up to 18 months worth of industry experience at 3 sponsor companies before graduation. There's lots of networking and mentoring with current scholars, Co-op alumni, and sponsor representatives. There's also a big focus on leadership and professional development training to help you prepare for your placements, for your career and beyond. And lastly, the financial support of $21,600 per annum over 4 years. There's also a chance to also be awarded a 5th year thesis scholarship for our engineering and science students. And most importantly, and in addition to all of that, Co-op scholars also have a lot of fun along the way with lots of social gatherings, helping form friendships and networks that extend across your program streams, but also university. And as our alumni often tell us, these friendships last a lifetime. If you'd like to apply, applications do close on the 30th of September 2024. If you're on the fence, we still recommend you apply because you never know what might end up happening, and hopefully from tonight we've convinced you and you've started your application. But please check out our website for more information, key dates, and how to apply. And now we'll move on to Q&A with our panelists. So please pop your questions into the Q&A box and we'll try and get through as many as possible. For Co-op program specific questions, we will try and answer as many of those as possible as well. But I also recommend going onto our website and reading our FAQs, which are FAQs for a reason. Michelle is helping me with moderating the questions, which I can see some of them are coming in, so I will pass back to her.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, everyone. I love the first question that I'm going to take to answer live is actually for the panelists, and that is plural because it's what's your advice, especially to those students who have very little engineering experience, on what we should or shouldn't talk about in our applications? And second point, the most important thing that Co-op taught you. So I don't know if any of you want to dive into that one.
I can go first if you'd like.
Thanks, Serena.
Well, I'd say I also applied with very little engineering experience, and the school I went to probably didn't have very much by way of providing engineering experience. So I think, and sorry, this is going a while back, but certainly the things I had touched on was more around some of the sort of leadership type activity that I had done at school. So, and just sort of trying to explain that there was a level of broad experience that I had, or broad, types of roles that I'd fulfilled at school. So I think that was one of the key things I had on my application. I think in terms of the co-op program, couple of things is you absolutely do come out with some fantastic contacts, and they can be friends, but there also may be sort of acquaintances that you just end up touching, I suppose bumping into later on in life. But for me, the cohort that I was with, we've been lifelong friends now, up until now, and we've helped each other out, and we've been able to provide, each other career advice, because ultimately we've all sort of gone into different industries, but I guess we all have different strengths. But I think that's been one of the biggest, really the biggest outtakes from the co-op program for me.
Thanks, Serena. Rob, over to you.
Yeah, it's sorry, I'm just refreshing myself on the question. Yeah, I think the biggest advice is just to show your passion. So if you're interested in chemical engineering or you're interested in renewables, just try and show why you're enthusiastic about it, and just try and communicate your experience if you've been involved in any local organisations or clubs or hobbies, and just try and show that you're enthusiastic and passionate about something, and that your attitude is willing to learn and willing to take things on and try and figure out how to solve problems. In terms of the most important things I've learned is probably more around communication and leadership, and how to network and how to build relationships with people. That can often be one of the bigger challenges for engineers, who typically tend to be a bit on the nerdier and introverted side. But often, if you're trying to win new business or try and solve problems, you need to reach out to different people. So co-op, through their leadership camps and some of the training that I did, really helped me with those things. And I can use those skills probably more than some of the technical things I've learned in university every day.
Great, thank you. Anything you wanted to add there, Varasara?
I guess just with the application, yeah, I also had very little engineering experience, but I think what got me through was just being myself, talking about, try to find something to make you stand out from the crowd. Because if you think about it, there's lots of applications, and the one that's different to the others would stand out more and give you a better chance at getting through.
Perfect, thank you. The next question I'll drop to is the Bachelor of Engineering, Master of Biomedical Engineering available in co-op? And I'm happy to take that one for you, Karen. When you enter co-op, you're entering in an undergraduate degree, and there's a whole bunch of different ways you can step through to the Masters of Biomedical Engineering, but initially you would start in one of the streams that is linked to the biomed engineering degree. So there's a whole range. There's mechanical, there's chemical, there's computer science, there's electrical, whichever one of those, or whichever of those multiple, because you can have up to 3 preferences in your application, are of interest to you, is what you would initially start your studies in. And then later on down the road, you can transfer to the Step Through Biomedical Engineering program. Which of those you choose should be dictated by what you're most interested in and how you'd like to kind of work in biomedical engineering, what part of engineering you'd like to take into and make your specialisation within biomed, but could also be dependent on who our sponsor companies are that are, sponsoring in particular streams. So take a look at that, and that might give you some direction on where you'd like to go. There's also a question here about whether UNSW's flexible first year engineering option is available through co-op. And I'll also just cover that one off now. It is not, and the reason for that is that our sponsor companies are sponsoring in specific areas. So they are sponsoring in an area that is relevant for their organization, and those sponsorships and therefore the industry placements that you're doing are available in specific disciplines. So if you're applying for co-op, you can have up to 3 preferences in your application, but you would need to be applying to a specific area, whether it's chemical, electrical, photovoltaic, engineering, whichever one is of interest to you. The second part of that question being, has anyone ever change discipline in that second year. And this is also really important because, again, we've got a cohort of sponsors who are sponsoring a cohort of students. And so for every sponsorship that we get, there is a scholarship that we're offering, and that equals a human. So we can't transfer you, even if your interests change, you can't transfer from chemical engineering into electrical engineering co-op, though you can transfer your degree. You can choose to study a different program at UNSW. Varasara, there is a specific question here for you. What made you choose chemical engineering specifically over other areas of engineering?
Yeah, I think chemical engineers are really the jack of all trades of engineers. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why I chose it, because, and I still think it is, like today, I'm about to graduate and I can see myself going into any industry. It's really a broad degree. So if you aren't unsure, I think I'd recommend chemical engineering for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. The second part of that question, which you can all see live there, is what does getting a co-op scholarship involve from application to physically working at the company? And you're writing an application. From the applications that we receive, we narrow it down and offer interviews to those who are most suited for the areas or that kind of really stand out to us in the application process. From those interviews, we're making conditional or shortlist offers. So those who made a conditional offer and accept start in the program. And for all of the streams, whether you're in engineering, business, or technology, you're going to study at least one full year at university before you go on your industry placement. We want to make sure you've got some good foundation, but believe me, nobody expects you to be able to solve all of the engineering problems in the world on your first industry training placement. So the timing of that first placement will vary, but is going to be in your second year, whether it's at the beginning, middle, or end. And then you'll have your second and third placements will be in your penultimate, so your second last year of university. I hope that answers what that question was looking for, but that's, yeah, a general outline there.
Maybe Michelle, as you're going through that, I can try and help with the Q&A, but there is a question there which says, when I look at your current sponsors on your site, there is none for mechanical or mechatronics engineering. Should I still apply for these fields or choose one that does have sponsors? So first off, thank you for bringing that to our attention. There are definitely mechanical and mechatronics engineering sponsors and scholarships. I will say that the numbers, like scholarships in general, does vary year on year. Some of our current sponsors in that space are Lion, ResMed, Honeywell. So yes, definitely still apply.
And also just to highlight, our website has undergone a refresh. So we're identifying issues as we go through. They are currently working on a bit of a new look and feel on the program site. So we're hoping that in the update that we can send you with this video, we'll also have a link to that new look and feel, so you can actually search for specific industry partners if they're of interest to you, or alternatively see all of the program's specific sponsors within that stream. Karen, let me ask you this one. Is it possible to do a double degree while in the co-op program?
So I guess I would sort of reiterate what Michelle was saying before, just in terms of when you enter the program, you do have to come through that single degree. What a big focus for us is, based on feedback from students in the program, is the provision of additional flexibility. So there is, I guess, the opportunity to discuss that once you've completed your first placement. But there are also, I guess, some additional requirements. So, we have to talk to your sponsors, we'll look at your grades, and most of all, we want to understand why you want to do that double degree. Does it make sense? Is it complementary? Michelle, have I missed anything there?
Nope, I think that's great. Well done. There's a question about your UAC preferences. Do your preferences for degrees on the co-op application all need to be on your UAC preferences? Guys, we know you only get 5 preferences in your UAC preferences. And it's a time where you're probably still trying to make some decisions, trying to understand where you want to go. I will say what we would like to see is that I suppose, some consistency in what you're talking about in your application with your UAC preferences. So if you're applied for 3 co-op programs in engineering, but all of your UAC preferences reflect business, or vice versa, or law, then we'll have some questions for you if you get through to the interview process, through to the interview section. That's not to say that it will stop us from interviewing you. If your responses to the questions in the application actually play out why you're interested in that varied area, or particularly for biomedical engineering, you may be looking at one of the program streams, but also have a really strong interest in medicine and still be trying to work that out. So there's sometimes some really logical reasons for that, but we are looking, I suppose, for the holistic picture of you as a human and not just some marks. So that's probably one of the great things, I think, about the co-op program. And just to, while we're on marks, ATAR is part of our process, but it is not the whole part of our process. We, again, are really looking at the full picture. So the more you can tell us about you as an individual and highlight why you're interested in particular areas, the better it is for your application. We do have a minimum ATAR requirement of a 96. We do consider EAS, which is the Education Accessibility Scheme. And for any students from a gateway school, there is a bit of flexibility there as well. And there's a whole bunch of information on the website there as well. But that's one part. And if you don't think you're going to hit a 96, or you're ruling yourself out because of that reason right now, then I would really encourage you to rethink that. Don't close doors on yourself. Keep them open for now. Karen, there's a question here. Do you do your degree full-time or part-time with a co-op scholarship?
So with the co-op scholarship, you do your degree full time, but in order to fit the placements in, it does add an extra year to your degree. So a standard engineering degree with honours is 4 years. And then in terms of the placements which happen in the 2nd and 4th year for engineering students, it becomes a 5-year degree. I think there was also a question just around, I guess, managing workload as you're sort of doing the placements and study. So typically for our engineering scholars, you do your placements full time without any additional study, just because engineering courses, as you've heard tonight, can be quite time intensive and course intensive. That's not to say that some of our students do complete a course in addition to that, but typically it's just your full-time work.
Thank you. Serena, there's a question here for you. What additional qualifications apart from co-op did you do to become a COE manager?
Look, I wouldn't say they're prerequisites, but I've just completed my MBA, so that's a Master's in Business Administration. So I think that complements in the sense of what you. One of the things I'd say is, when you go through uni and study, a single degree in engineering, as you go through your career, sometimes there are areas where you'd like to learn a little bit more on, and certainly sort of finance, economics, business. Commerce, those were areas that at some point it became more obvious to me that those were areas that I wanted to pick up some skill on. So for me, doing a master's in business administration made sense. So while it wasn't a clear prerequisite, it certainly helps just generally with having more as you sort of work your way through to some of the leadership positions. You do need to be able to think more strategically and commercially. And that type of degree helps. I've also done, a qualification in project management through an institute called the PMI. So again, I don't think it would have been considered a prerequisite, but all these additional qualifications I certainly feel helped in landing the role.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Karen, I'll throw this one to you. Will the industry placements provide a salary on top of the $21,600 per annum, or is it included?
So there is no additional salary on top when you are on placement. So students get paid the $21,600 per year as a stipend. They come through as fortnightly payments, regardless of whether you are on placement or studying full time.
The One exception that we'll just highlight there is any students who are interested in mining engineering. There is a slightly different process for you. A lot of that is to do with the mining sector's requirements. So there's some more information on the website. So the scholarship amount is different and you're paid directly by the organisation when you're on placement. But if you've got specific questions about that, feel free to email us. There's a question here about, is software engineering included in the program? It wasn't included on the slide. It certainly is included within the co-op program. Although this is an engineering night, we put software engineering into our technology event, which is tomorrow night. So I hope this evening has been of interest to you, even though if you're interested in software, it might not have been directly related. Karen, how many scholars are chosen per year? Is it dependent on different degrees? Roughly how many chosen each year?
So we say this all the time, but it just depends year on year. So like Michelle said before, a scholarship is typically linked to a human. So it does depend just in terms of our sponsor companies. I will say that, you know, at any given year, we do aim to have 80 scholarships per year, but it just depends.
Thank you. And just while I've got you, Karen, does the co-op program provide internship with partner companies, or is it upon the students to find their own internships and submit them for approval?
So the beauty of co-op is that the hard work is done in the background. So in terms of getting a co-op scholarship, there are sort of a sponsor pool that's set up for a particular cohort year and stream. I think there was another question around, I think, selection of companies. So in terms of how that process works, it kind of depends depending on the stream, but typically there is a process for allocation, so preferences, and whatnot from students. But what we focus on from the co-op program is providing as much of a diverse experience for students across those 3 placements.
Perfect, thank you. We have a year 11 student who's online with us who said, what can I do now to prepare myself and make myself more suitable for the application process? I'd love to direct this to any of our speakers, so Serena, Varasara or Rob. Is there anything that you think a student in year 11 could do to kind of prepare themselves for applying for co-op or for studying engineering?
I guess do as many extracurriculars as you can, get more, as Karen said, other life experiences aside from studying, but also you need to do well as well in studying. But yeah, try to get those extra different experiences.
Thank you.
Yeah, probably I'd just add in, yeah, just try and learn about some of the different fields of engineering. I mean, they all, when I was a high school student, were pretty cryptic and I didn't really understand what a mechatronic engineer did versus a mining engineer. So maybe try and go to the UNSW Open Day. All the different schools will have their stalls there and you can find out what kind of different engineers can do and learn what's interested and do some research and yeah, just try and study hard, but also yeah, get involved with co-curricular and follow your passions.
Great, thank you. While I have the panelists here, also, did any of you struggle managing your workload during placements, or did you work part-time or casual jobs through uni? So Karen's already highlighted that for majority of our engineering streams, you don't need to do subjects. The fact that we have more online subjects now has certainly made that more of a possibility for students in engineering now than it was in the past. But I'm just, if any of you have worked a part-time job or found it difficult to keep up with the academic requirements for co-op?
If I could, I might just jump in. I think I'd say the first 6 months is pretty full on. Like it's a big change from high school, right? And particularly, I think, you know, that there's been mentioned, but the contact hours for engineering is quite high. So I don't know what it is now, but certainly, you know, for me, it was something like 36 hours a week. So that in itself is a lot of time spent in classes, in tutorials, in labs. So I'd probably say maybe take it a little bit easy, you know, at least in the first 6 months to a year, sort of try and get yourself used to just the change in pace and change in workload. I think for example, I had a casual job, but it wasn't something that I didn't have a lot of hours going every week. And then generally, I think with the payment, is the payment still upfront, Michelle? I don't, in terms of
Payments fortnightly stipend, so it's coming in regardless of whether you're studying or working.
Yeah, so I mean
placement.
that's almost like you're working anyways, right? So at least you're getting some funds in. But that's certainly the experience I had.
Thank you. So there is a question here about compared to non-co-op scholars, are scholars isolated, or do you have the same university experience or the same experiences as everyone? Varasara, as the most recent co-op scholar, would you say that your university experience is similar to other students or isolating?
It's not isolating, and I think it's actually, you actually get to do more things. You get to go on more industry placements and learn more about the industry. So I think in that sense, it's better. The only thing for chemical engineering, and I guess for the others, is because you have that extra year off, your friends might graduate 1 year earlier. And for chemical engineering specifically, we have a design project where we work as a group of 5. So then it might be a bit hard to find friends because they've already graduated. But then you've also got your cohort of co-op chem eng students. So I know last time I just did my design project with the other 2 chem eng co-op, so it worked out fine, and I don't think you'll lose anything from it. And like I said, I even got like an exchange out of it, and it's something that some of my friends couldn't do because they were doing industry placements at that time. So
perfect, thank you. There's a couple of questions about civil engineering, and I acknowledge that this is a confusing space. We do have it listed on our website because we have had civil engineering in the past. We don't currently have it open for application because without having a strong lead on civil engineering sponsors, we don't want people to go through that whole application and interview process without a scholarship that we're fairly confident we'll be able to offer at the end. So it's not currently open for civil engineering. And the second part of somebody's question was, what should I apply for instead? That's a really tricky one. Civil is like chemical engineering, like electrical engineering, one of those engineering programs that's quite diverse and gives you a lot of different pathways that you can go down. The question comes back to, what is it that you're looking for in your career? What is it that you're interested in? What kind of problems do you want to solve? What kind of areas would you like to work in? If it is in building bridges and roads, then civil's probably the right place for you. There are other scholarships available at UNSW that aren't co-op, so there's other ways for you to have financial support. And there are other industry partners that sit outside of co-op that you might be able to get some experience with as well. So I can't recommend a different area for you to study if civil's not available for co-op. I
think I'm happy to jump in, Michelle. So I think there is that sort of point of clarification, I know, because we've had a few questions, but in terms of that target of 80 co-op scholarships a year, that is across all our disciplines of business, technology, and engineering. It does depend year on year, but I'd say with engineering, and I'll include science, which does include material science, data science, and like advanced maths, we probably get on average maybe like 15 to 20 a year. And then I'm happy to also answer another question that's here, just around, are all internships based in Sydney? How will this work for students who are not based in Sydney or not planning to live in Sydney over the summer breaks? So some of the placements are outside of Sydney. I will say that we've had students apply for co-op around Australia internationally. So students do come and either live on campus or find sort of other accommodation. But for the placements, because it is engineering, and like sort of Serena and Varasara spoke about, it can take you everywhere. So we have had placements that have been in Lithgow, in Brisbane, in the Northern Territory, in Wollongong, and we also have some of our photovoltaic scholars who are doing some of their placements in the US next year. In terms of, I guess, from a financial side, it just depends in terms of the sponsors who are sponsoring the program, but sometimes there is an additional per diem or a living away from home allowance, but that's discussed with you, before. So you have all the details.
Thanks, Karen. Are the applications for 2025 meaning for 2024 Year 12 graduates or Year 12 graduates of 2025. We talk about the year students start. So even for our alumni and our current scholars, we talk about them as the year they started. So our 2025 co-op applications are for students who would be commencing in 2025, students who would start the scholarship in 2025. So if you're in year 12 now, you would be applying for a 2025. If you are in year 12 now, but considering going on a gap year, you can still apply, but you know, if you're not 100% sure on what you're doing, but you wouldn't be able to accept a scholarship if you're not planning to start at UNSW next year. So I hope that clarifies. So, sometimes I get confused what year it is right now because I'm working in 2025 from January 2024, so always very confusing. And then there's a question around when are offers made for co-op. So all of that is laid out on the website so that you can easily reference it. But we close applications the 30th of September. We assess the applications in October. We make interview offers in the first-ish week of November. Interview briefing day this year, which is where we give you a bit more insight on who has signed on for scholarships for 2025 and the kind of things you should be considering for your interview stage. That's on the 19th of November, and then interviews themselves are on the 20th. So we give you another little support in preparing for your interviews the day before the interviews actually happen. Then we make conditional offers, and you'll get advised of the outcome of your interview, whether you've got a conditional offer, are on a short list, or were unsuccessful. Everybody will be advised of the outcome a week before ATARs are released here in New South Wales. And then you've got that week to kind of think about, okay, if I got the scholarship, is this what I want to do? I've applied for 3 programs. I've got 3 scholarships. Which one do I want to do before your ATARs are released? So on the day that ATARs come out, if you receive an ATAR on that date, you would phone us to accept or decline your conditional offer. If you're shortlisted, we would go through the process of moving you from shortlist to conditional as and when we can. Again, it's a lot of words. That is laid out on the website for you, so please feel free to have a look there and to get a bit of a better understanding.
I was going to say, speaking of interviews, Michelle, there was a question around how many rounds of interviews do we need to go through for the co-op scholarship, and what's the format of the interview? And I think there was another question underneath that around are the interviews with sponsors or co-op leaders and uni representatives? So I will try and answer that all in one go. So there is just that one interview or one round of interview. So like Michelle said, there is that written application process. You do need to do a video snapshot, and then there is that interview, and it's typically just a 30-minute interview, and it's typically a panel of 2 or 3 representatives, and that can be from the co-op team, that can be alumni, that can be UNSW academics, and also sponsor representatives as well.
Beautiful. And I'm just going to answer this briefly, but then also maybe ask our panelists, are there any extracurriculars that help more than others with the application process? So in terms of help more than others, no. What we're looking for is not what you did, but what you learnt from what you did, what skills you might have developed, how that has shaped you as a person. So that's what we're looking at from the co-op perspective, whether that activity is school captain or working part-time at McDonald's or leading a choir group with your church. Is so long as you can articulate to us what it is you've learned and what you've gained from that experience, then those are equally as important in terms of what you did. But for the panelists, I'd love to ask, were there any specific extracurriculars you did at in high school that you used in your application, if we can remember, and ones that you used in your application? I'm going to throw to you, Varasara, because you're the most recent. That might give the other 2 time to remember if they can.
Yeah, I think one of the projects I talked about was just making a motor. I know in physics you can make motors out of like just a battery and paper clips and wires, and I talked about that, and I think that's something that the interviewers really liked, and they asked me how I problem solved that. So I think that's something that you could think about the things that you've done and how you can show that you're a problem solver, because essentially that's what engineering is all about, problem solving. So if you can find any experience and try to see how like you've solved a problem. I think that would put you in a good place.
Perfect. Sorry to put you on the spot, Serena or Rob. Do you remember anything that you did in high school that you might have used for your application?
I think I might have, I'm pretty sure I touched on the Duke of Ed. So I did do the Duke of Edinburgh program. And obviously there was a couple of interesting experiences through, well, there was sort of an example of showing leadership or an example of problem solving or working through quite a difficult situation. So that was certainly one of them that I can remember.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, for me, I think it was doing some hobby electronics and software programming. So kind of when I was a high school student, I'd tinker around with a few different things that I was interested in. So yeah, just find something you're passionate about and just try and communicate why you like it and what you got out of it and what you learned. I don't think there's such a thing as doing co-curricular activities because it'll be seen well by co-op. You really want to be authentic and honest and show what you're interested in, what you're passionate in. And when you're talking about things that you're passionate in, that'll come across a lot better in your application and your interview. And that's really what the sponsor companies and the co-op program look for. They want to see who you are and what's important to you and whether that fits with what the companies are looking for.
Absolutely, thank you. And that kind of answers one of the questions, what are sponsors looking for? They're looking for people who are genuine. They're looking to get to know you as an individual, but also how you could be an asset to their organization or to their drive, what their company is trying to do. The only way that you can really understand if co-op is the right fit for you and for the sponsor companies to understand if you're the right fit for their organization, because ultimately it needs to be a pairing. It needs to be a match. You know, you might put all of this effort in and put up these facades and ultimately end up in something that doesn't fit you, really isn't going to serve you. And it's a fantastic vehicle. Co-op is a fantastic vehicle if it's going to take you where you want to go. But if the train's going in the opposite direction, it is not helpful for you. So really, the scholarship is wonderful. The experience is wonderful. But is it really going to get you to where you want to go? And that's why we have a written application and a video snapshot to get to know you a little bit more, and an interview process. It's not because we're mean. It's not because we want to put you through hell. It's so that we can really find out if this is a great fit for you. And just off the back of that, in addition, there's a question about how much of an impact do your grades make on your application. From the co-op perspective, that's the last thing that we're looking for. The last hurdle that you're jumping and the conditional offer is on the basis that you achieve the minimum ATAR that's required to get into the program. In the engineering streams, obviously the ATARs required to start engineering at UNSW are lower than what the co-op minimum is. And that is because you've got that juggle as you go through your studying and then you're on full-time placements. You don't have as many holidays or as much downtime as other students. So those are all things that, you know, are kind of built into our application process as well. I am very conscious of the time. Karen, was there any other questions that really stood out to you that we need to answer right now?
There was one more, but I guess, again, just another point of clarification just around the interview. So these interviews are in person. It's also why we give the dates so far in advance. But we do understand that I guess sometimes life does happen or gets in the way. So we do try and accommodate that in extenuating circumstances. There is a question here, because I guess, Michelle, you did speak about, you know, co-op and that fit. You know, making sure that it is for the student. There is a question here that says, what if midway through the program I decide to change courses? Do I need to repay the scholarship?
Yep, that's a question that we hope we won't have to deal with in your time in the program, but it certainly is a reality. I think each of our speakers tonight kind of shared that the industry placements tell you as much about what you are interested in as what you are not interested in. And sometimes your first industry placement may highlight to you that what you understood to be a chemical engineer, an electrical engineer, a mining engineer is not what you want to be doing. And that's, you know, that's a reality. So the timing of when you're exiting the program is the key part there. As you can understand, sponsors are sponsoring a program with the view to having students come and work with them and ultimately, in their eyes, they'd love to recruit you to be part of their organisation as well. So depending on when you're exiting the program, there could be some repayment requirement. There may not be. It's all a little bit dependent on specific circumstances. But I suppose the point is, have we ever had students leave the program? Yes, we have. Some students are repaying, some students are not, depending on the timing that they're leaving the program. So again, if you're making a real honest decision for where you want to see your future and asking yourself a lot of those hard questions early on, what am I really interested in doing? Why am I interested in this? What is it that I'd like to get out of a career? Then you might not be in that circumstance moving forward, but if you are, then we will deal with that as it comes up. Two very quick things I'm going to answer, and then we can take the rest of the questions offline and shoot through some answers as well. Does UNSW take EAPL into account for the ATAR requirement? UNSW, EAPL is elite athletes, performers, and leaders. For your UNSW application, it does. For the co-op application, we are not adjusting your selection rank on the basis of EAPL points or adjustment factors. But for your UNSW university application, they can be considered. And if a student in Australia takes Cambridge A-levels in their school instead of HSC, will that affect their application in any way? No, we're a GO8 university. There are smart people who know how to translate what A-levels look like in terms of the ATAR. So that is the UAC admissions team actually kind of highlight for us what that looks like in terms of an HSC or an ATAR. So we have students applying, as Karen highlighted, from all around the world, and they're Australian citizens or permanent residents who are living overseas. So that's certainly something that can be managed. I think that's probably as many questions as we can get through because it is 7:20. And Karen, I'm just going to hand back to you for final words.
No, that's right. I might just quickly add, because there was one last question. We lied. There was just around IB. So IB is part of that as well in terms of don't stress. The admissions team will do their calcs in the back and tell us. So just to wrap up, I just want to say thank you to our panelists for joining us tonight and sharing your experience and journey. But also thank you to you, the participants who've joined us on a rainy Wednesday night. I hope it's been helpful in navigating your next step. For those who joined late, a reminder that we will send everyone who's registered a link to the recordings for all 3 sessions this week, and they will also be uploaded to YouTube just in the next few weeks. We'll also send across just some additional information for sort of any popular questions or reoccurring questions that we didn't get to tonight. And again, check out the FAQs on our website. And if you don't already, please follow us on our social media platforms, especially Instagram, where we showcase our scholar experiences and achievements, provide tips on applications, and highlight all of our co-op events. But that's it from us. So thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.